And here we are once again, everybody, for episode 4. We're on 4 already of Let's Talk About This, and I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. Last episode, of course, was about soup, which I really like. And you may think it's a joke, but go back and listen and you'll find out that it was not a joke at all. So this week, I have another guest, okay? And this week, I figured I'd search around for people that can kind of tolerate my presence. And I decided to rope in my good old hunting buddy from the old days on the range, Mr. Robert Solomon, of course.
What's up? What's up? Well, it's been a long time since I've seen Spreaker.
I know.
They didn't really clean up very well in here, did they?
No. The cobwebs are more cobwebby than ever.
Can't even get a good talk show going in here.
No, not really. Just got to settle with what I got. So, so what we have...
Can't be any worse than the last one.
Yikes. So, you guys know, if you've been listening for the first 3 episodes, or I guess maybe not if you've just tuned in and been like, what the heck is this? I usually try to pick a topic when I have a guest for something that I'm not as into or don't know as much about. And this is kind of a biggie. Like, we've had a lot of talks about this before. And people have tried to get me into this kind of thing before, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I can't do it. But, so this topic, we're going to be talking about those good old Japanese cartoons, big in America. We're going to be talking about anime. So let's talk about this.
Well, first, go ahead. Sorry.
No. No, you're the guest now, so you get to jump in, and you get to just, throw it around and be like, hey, I'm a guest now. You got to serve me first.
I'm not like that, though, so I don't know how well that'll work.
You get to, though, if you want to.
But, so, I've been into anime probably, I would say if I had to, like, really pinpoint a time when I was into anime, it would have to be... I want to say 90s. There used to be anime on the Sci-Fi Channel, the place that has like some of the worst movies known to man, like Dark Helicopter and Sharknado and Sharknado 2 Electric Boogaloo. And I was at my grandmother's house. I was probably 13, 14 at the time. I remember just flipping channels, and I knew about anime. Like, I'd always known about anime. It's not something that you just don't know about. I knew about it, just didn't watch much of it. I remember they had a science fiction anime on called 3 by 3 Eyes. Aliens, monsters, stuff like that. It was real grimy. It was like, grimy stuff. Not NSFW type stuff, because that's hentai, and that's a whole different thing. But
that's a different show.
80s anime was like the Wild West for anime. Like, it was bloody. It was crazy. Fist of the North Star, punching, blowing skin up, blowing bones up, blowing everything up, right? But 90s anime was a little bit different. So I ended up watching it, and like I didn't get to catch all of it because, I only stayed at my grandma's like once a week. So I would try to watch it as best I could. This was like 1, 2 in the morning. That's how TV was back then. Anything that was too over the top, they had to go on late because, you didn't have that kind of stuff during the day. Plus, nobody really watched anime. When I was growing up, anime wasn't this big thing. It wasn't this huge thing. People didn't watch it. People knew of anime like Akira. They knew, I believe, about Studio Ghibli stuff, that kind of stuff. The softer side of anime, and like the more crazy stuff that got real popular, like Akira was really good, Ninja Scroll, stuff like that. So for me, I had to be like 93, 94, and after that, I would always try to catch it if it was on, and I would watch darn near anything. And like I said, this is before anime got really big, before people were watching Naruto and Bleach and One Piece and Sailor Moon, and even though that kind of stuff, like Sailor Moon was already out. In Japan, that kind of stuff is on TV during the day. If you watch anime or if you watch the episodes, sometimes they'll pause in the middle of the episode to tell you what it's like, what the anime, what company is bringing it to you. Like, I think one was Pepsi did one, Nabisco did another. So this is like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. In Japan, they're showing Bleach, or they're showing Naruto, or they're showing One Piece. So.
Now, I have a really limited scope on anime. We've talked about this before. You know me. I have like I'm a fan of Ghost in the Shell, which is around the era that you talked about, which is like the 90s,
Classic.
where it was, good stuff, good serious stuff. I liked Cowboy Bebop because it was meant to be just insanity. It was almost like a throwback to the 80s stuff.
Yeah, classic. Classic.
But I don't get into much else. Like, my daughter's into Pokemon and stuff like that, because Pokemon's gigantic, of course, here in the United States.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But just to be, like, real clear on everything, like, what does it have to be to count as anime? Is Japanese anime really the only true anime, or is that just where it starts? Like, how do you decide what is and what isn't, almost? Is it the style, or what?
Well, I think what anime was at first was a Japan-only thing, because it originated out of Japan. We have manga that came out of Japan, and anime is just manga brought to life. Lone Wolf and Cub, was one of the first manga series in Japan. I think that dates back to like the 70s.
And they
60s,
do go
70s.
hand in hand. Like, a lot of times when people do a manga, not too long after, if it gets popular, they do an anime of it. But a lot of times the manga will outlive the anime by tens of years as far as the issues go.
Yeah. Well, if we look at something like Naruto or Bleach, a lot of time the most beautiful thing about manga is there's no fillers. So like a Naruto or a Bleach that's running so many episodes for so many seasons, 7, 8 seasons, they have to have filler because they have to have people that are animating the different design boards and things like that, and they're putting that all together. So they have to have filler, but the mangas don't. Those are just drawing. You're drawing panels, and depending on who you are, a lot of time it's work 100%. But if you're dealing with something like Shonen Jump and Bleach's creator, then you're running into something much more nefarious, actually, when it comes to that, because the Bleach's creator, and I'm gonna look up this gentleman's name now because I forget who created it. I know his name and it's like right on the tip of my tongue. Tite Kubo, I was right. He was drawing these beautiful panels. If you ever read Bleach, like the first few seasons of Bleach in terms of manga, and the first volumes, I should say, so that's a lot better way of putting it. But if you read the first few volumes of Bleach, it's very beautiful. The panels are well done. Once you get to the later volumes of Bleach, because Shonen Jump is absolutely, and this goes for really any Japanese company, they are very, very strict on their employees. I mean, these are the same corporations that have their employees sleeping under desks at video game studios like Konami and places like that. I won't get too much into that. So that suffered. But the Bleach anime, you start running into these long animes, you're running into story issues, as we have seen from both Bleach and Naruto. But to get back on focus here, I think at one point, yes, it had to come out of Japan. It was more an anime based. It was the drawing style. A lot of American cartoons, as we call them, are very bubbly. They're very laughy, smiley, that sort of thing. There wasn't really any dark cartoons per se. I mean, you had heavy metal.
Yeah.
You had The Hobbit, things like that. You had a little
The Ralph
more,
Bakshi kind of stuff.
Even though The Hobbit was still kid friendly, but there was more of a focus on a series of books. But the stuff you had coming out of Japan, Dune Megalopolis, for example, don't watch that. Anybody out there that I just said that's a cursed anime, do not watch it. It's 80s anime ramped up to the hilt. It's got everything. Like, so, Dune Megalopolis is crazy. I had it and then I gave it to somebody because I was like, but yeah, at first I think so. I think that anime had to come out of Japan because of Japan's society and things like that. But then you have Korean anime that comes out much later. I think God of High School is one such anime that came out from Korea. I know a good buddy of mine that I lived with. He was always talking about that. He read the comic online and they made a show about it. So that is an instance of anime kind of branching out. And I believe there's a Chinese anime. I haven't watched a lot of that stuff because I'm a bit of a purist. I'm not really used to branching out into other countries for anime because for the most part anime has always come out of Japan. But I think now we're at a time and a place where anime isn't just placed in one country. It can be worldwide. You know, you can create anime here in the States and put that out. So I think I think a lot of it's art style. I think it's story. You know, a lot of people like cartoons like Avatar, you know, and that's kind of like anime. But I think for the most part, anime is more, I don't want to say adult oriented because that's not really the right terminology to use. But I think it's just more story driven. And I don't know, it's a tough call, but I do think that at first anime, yes, was a Japan thing, but I think now it's a worldwide thing. I don't think you can contain it to just Japan anymore.
Another thing that I noticed, as somebody who's not super into it, but I kind of follow like some of the cultural stuff, usually here in the United States, with our cartoons and our animated stuff, a lot of times you have a lot of episodes that have no connection to each other. They're just, hey, this is Adventure of the Week stuff, so-and-so, they do all this stuff, and every once in a while you'll have a story that'll take place over a part 1 or a part 2 or something like that, right? Whereas in anime and in some of the other sort of like overseas animation, there's almost always an overarching story over everything. It's not just like, hey, they do this random thing this week, this random thing this week, this random thing this week. It's usually almost a continuous thing, and occasionally they'll break it up with, like you said, the filler episodes. And that seems to be kind of a hallmark of anime things as well, that sets it apart kind of from our stuff.
I think for the most part you're correct, but then you'll have other animes that don't do that at all. Memories, for instance, is one of my personal favorite animated movies. It's 3 short stories about different things. They're not connected. There's not a universe for them. One is about a couple guys who are exploring a derelict spaceship, and this one guy keeps hearing this piano music. The other guy can't. And it's the ship slowly driving this man mad. The other one is about this guy who was a lab worker and he was experimenting, and the experiment got on him, and it's basically like a giant stink bomb. So everywhere he goes, he has this smell that emits off of him, and just miles and miles and miles of the smell. And these people are trying to stop him from going, they're trying to kill him, basically. And his stink will kill people. And then the third one is about this city that fires cannons every day at an unknown enemy. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows where it is. They just fire off cannons. And there's probably like 1,000 cannons in the city. So that's an instance. I know Junji Ito, the horror master himself, he has a lot of animes that don't connect, save for Uzumaki, Spiral, which is coming to Toonami at some point. They've been putting it off for so long. They just put it off again, and I'm really excited because I read the manga of Uzumaki, and it is by far one of my favorite horror mangas because I read a few. But for the most part, you're right. And the thing too you have to notice with Japanese anime is something like Cowboy Bebop that centers around the crew and Jet and Ein and Faye. They all are usually together, but then you have a couple episodes where they're not. One of my personal favorites is the Pierre LaFaux episode, which is almost like a horror anime. And he's chasing Spike around this giant amusement park. That was one of my favorite episodes of that because it was different. It wasn't the same as the other ones, but it still had the theme of Cowboy Bebop. Cromartie High School is another one. It's about a bunch of juvenile delinquents, but there's one guy that isn't a juvenile delinquent, but he goes to the school because it's the closest school en route to his home, so he can't go anywhere else. And they get into these shenanigans. Well, one of the episodes is they flip it and they make it a Cromartie girls' high school, and they're all female juvenile delinquents. So once again, still keeping the same name, and still keeping the same basic structure. But there's not really too many animes that just completely jump ship for episodes. At least that I don't know any. Most all the anime I've seen is point A to point B.
Pretty consistent.
It's all in sync. Yeah, exactly. exactly.
That's another thing too that I noticed, and this kind of compares it to like here again in the United States, we have, getting away from anime for just a minute to make a comparison. We've got the soap operas that go on for decades and decades and years and years and years, and we've seen, like, when we used to work where we used to work at, we would sit
that bomb.
in the break room. We'd be following the story sometimes because some lady there was like huge into the soap operas.
Sheila loved it. Sheila loved that
Yeah,
story.
and it'd be like you'd see something one week and then it would just be like, well, everybody forgot about it next week. It's just disconnected, but it goes on for years.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah,
a lot of
Days of Our
times,
Lives, I think it was.
in a lot of times with like South America and with some of the Korean shows and things like that, they have a definite end. Like, they're going to end at some point. They have this many seasons.
Right.
That's it, start to finish. Then something new starts, maybe with the same actors, but they're different characters and things like that.
Right.
And anime tends to do that a lot too. Not all the time, but even then, like with my daughter's Pokemon, it's been more like Americanized because they're appealing to the American consumer market for all the Pokemon merchandise and everything, right?
Right.
So you have first bunch of seasons, he's in this region. Second bunch of seasons, it's a different show, but it's still the same character, and he's going through this region. And he might meet people from the first season or set or the next one, and then so on and so forth. But he's always in a different place, but it's the same concept. But each one still definitively ends with something. So even though the series continues, and you can identify it because it's still Ash going out trying to become a Pokemon master, each one has a definite end. Once you've done what you've done, he leaves the region. He goes on to someplace else.
And that's the thing. That's even in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is one of my personal favorite animes. A lot of occult stuff in there. A lot of just really strategic thinking as they're playing. Same as anybody knows, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a big, huge card game. It's a massive hit at card shops. People play this. I've tried. I don't like it. But the anime is really good. And it's the same basic concept. You have Yugi Muto and his friends. And they first start off by fighting Pegasus. And then it goes from Pegasus to the battle finals on a giant airship that Kaiba owns, and they fight Merrick. That arc is probably between that arc and I would say there's a couple others, but that one is my favorite. But it's the same characters, and like I said, it has a lot of occult symbolism in it, and it's overall a solid show. But yeah, like you said, that's one of those shows. I mean, yeah, you'll have, and this is the same with Dragon Ball Z too. You'll have Goku. He first fights Frieza, and then he goes on to fight Cell, and then he goes on to fight Majin Buu. There's somebody else. I don't watch it after the Majin Buu arc because after that it's just kind of tedious. But same basic concept, And these are worldwide famous animes. Most anime doesn't tend to veer off from anywhere between 26 to 28 episodes. Cowboy Bebop, Battlestar, Big O, the big three in my opinion. Those all stayed around 26 to 28 episodes, and they're fantastic. I don't think you need 400 episodes in the case of One Piece, or multitudes of episodes to tell a good story. And I think that the more you go on with a show, the less impactful the story is. A lot of people are like, hey, I'm going to read, or I'm going to watch One Piece. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm like, good luck. I tried. I tried to start watching One Piece, and I can't catch up. And I don't have the attention span to sit there and watch something that's 400 to 500 episodes deep, maybe even more at this point, deep, to where I'm like, yeah, let me do that. No. I'd rather watch an anime that I'm actually going to like, and it will be 26 episodes, like I said. There's some really good anime out there. There's some good lighthearted anime. You have Spy X Family. You have My Uncle from Another Dimension. And these are all shorter animes. Yeah, they're going to have more seasons. Well, actually, I think My Uncle from Another Dimension, I think, is actually ending. They're getting ready to put the series finale out. There's 13 episodes coming out, or there's 13 episodes total. I believe 13 being the last one. But then you have anime movies. Space Captain Harlock was legit. We have Leah in the chat. Hello, Leah. And she says, that's why I had to stop watching Bleach. I stopped watching Bleach right when Yaweech, which was like the Colt Quincy arc, I got bored. because I couldn't do the filler, so I stopped watching. So I read the manga. I read the manga in like 4 days. I want to say like 4 days. Same. I did the same thing. Naruto. I stopped watching Naruto where, well, it was Shippuden because it changed it to Shippuden because he's a little bit older, and he fights this. Sasori fights. I forget the other guy, but they have this puppet fight, and the puppet fight was a really good fight. Like it was, they had the Bunraku kind of puppet fighting, which was really awesome. I just stopped. I couldn't do it. I can't. Like I just, something about things that run long, if it's not good, I just can't watch it. And I watched a lot of TV shows, but for some reason with anime, it's really hard for me to keep watching, just based on the fact of that. And yeah, like I said, being 5 seasons in, they ruined some good stories. And I think the filler doesn't help. The filler is why I stopped watching Naruto the first time, because the fights in Bleach, Ulquiorra versus Ichigo, and Ichigo gets he goes full hollow, and he's crazy. Like he's not mentally there, and he's just one of the dopest fights. Because see, Bleach and Naruto are about fights. It's not really about story, because Naruto is basically, at the beginning, he's this kid, he's picked on. Why doesn't anybody like me? He wants to be Hokage. But then you come to find out that his dad was Hokage, and it's all predestined, and it kind of loses that magic of this kid's from nothing, and here he's doing his thing. But then you find out, no, he's always been destined for greatness. So it ruins it. And I think, like you said, once you start stretching out the story, I would just watch fights. I'd find out what episode it was and watch the fight. The Pain arc in Naruto is amazing. I've watched that arc, an amazing arc. I like Pain. Also, like I said, Bleach's fights are fantastic, but the plot sucks. So, anyways, yeah, not to go long-winded, but
well, no, that's good stuff. That kind of leads me into another thing, because we've mentioned some of the movies, like we talked about, like you mentioned Akira. I said Ghost in the Shell, and once you get into some of that area that isn't connected to a series, when you get into things that are just a one-stop shop kind of thing, you get into like the Studio Ghibli stuff, which is like basically works of art more than anything else. Like they spend huge, like ridiculous amounts of time with the drawing for the animation. Like my daughter, she hasn't seen too many, but she really likes Ponyo. Ponyo is like her absolute favorite. She's seen it a ton of times. And you can watch, like, you can see how much care was put in to the scenes. You can see how much effort was put in compared to some of the American ones where, I mean, yeah, they look good. Like, we've got Pixar, we've got all these Disney things and whatnot, but it's an entirely different level of drawing to animate this stuff.
Well, if you look at Spirited Away, which for the longest time was my favorite, because I didn't watch a lot of Studio Ghibli. I really wasn't into it, because at the time there was so much anime that was more my style that Studio Ghibli was too. It was too sweet. It was too nice. I'm watching things like Gungrave. I'm watching things like Gundam Wing's Endless Waltz, Big O. All of these like really action-oriented, mystery-oriented, science fiction-oriented stuff. So when I got into the Ghiblis a little bit later, I was just enthralled with how beautiful their design team. I mean, if you look at the food in Spirited Away, you're like, bro, I want to eat some of that food.
I've sent you. I remember sending you a video of just a bunch of food scenes from all their movies, like all strung together. Because I was kind of like, wow, these are really well done. Like
the meat, like I really just want to put my hand in and just eat that food. But they're probably the most beautiful anime studio I've ever seen. And I've watched a lot of anime, and there's a couple others that are just beautiful. But if I had to say my favorite, I really like Nausicaa. Nausicaa was really good. Of course, Howl's Moving Castle has a really, really special place in my heart. So I enjoy that one. There's a couple others that I like, because I like their more... Like, Nausicaa was just really, really good to me. Like, I like that one. and I forget the name of it. The Land Between Sea and Air. It was something along the lines of that. That was just amazing. Yeah, that was a good one too. But you really can't. There's not really one I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Porco Rosso is classic. Spirited Away, classic. Howl's Moving Castle, classic. They're all good, and they're all good in their own way. They're all independent of each other. Tales of Earthsea, thank you. I was trying to remember. I didn't want to start typing and make noise. That was a good one. I like that one. Tales of Earthsea is pretty good too. So it's like you have all this beautiful animation, and it's fantastic. You know, Kiki's Delivery Service. That's another really good one. And she's right. My favorites are actually her least favorites. So except Howl's Moving Castle, I know she really likes Howl's Moving Castle, but it's the same. Like I just. But then again, the ones I'm talking about are more. They're not as I don't want to say sweet, but they're not as heartwarming as the ones that she likes. I like the more actiony Studio Ghibli's. But that's the best thing about Studio Ghibli is everybody has a favorite. And that's that to me, when you can transcend a specific genre and have people say, yeah, I don't like this one, but I like this one. Or I don't like that one, but I like this one. You know what I mean? And I think there's something to be said for that. Because Studio Ghibli is a good entryway into anime. I think it's a fantastic entryway. You know, you have that. Me, 14 years old, watching 3x3 Eyes on the Sci-Fi Channel at 14, that was my entryway into anime. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a beautiful thing to watch people actually get into this anime period, because for so long, man, you couldn't, if you watched anime, you were seen as kind of a goofball. It wasn't a popular thing, and then you had the weebs kind of.
Yeah,
kind of came
the super
out during
fans.
The Naruto and Bleach era. They were just like, yeah, I'm using my jutsu on you. And I'm like, no, you're not. It's not a real thing. Please don't do that. It's very cringe. But, nonetheless, because it blew up over here. Like, it blew up. Anime blew up in the United States. More so than anywhere else. Japan was just like, yeah, this is what we do. Nobody was doing the same thing. Nobody was running around going nuts. Sure, they had, cosplay and things like that. But here, I remember being up at college and seeing people wearing the Naruto gloves, doing the jutsus.
With the lines on their face to be like the demon whiskers.
Right. I like anime too, but it's not. I'm not living it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the difference. Because it's just it always struck me as funny seeing people do that kind of stuff, and to each their own. But I always just thought that was funny. It was it was kind of hilarious.
Well, some of that too is kind of what put me off for most of it, because in order to, like, a lot of what they do for American audiences, and because Japanese culture is different. Japanese culture, their entertainment is meant to be entertainment. It's always meant to be, like, over the top. It's supposed to be really dramatic in many ways, because that's how they see it. It's just, they're such a regimented society that they view their entertainment as that. It's entertainment. Whereas here, we mix everything. Everything in the United States is mixed. It's business and pleasure and everything all mixed into one big thing. And there's always controversy over, oh yeah, you're going to watch that show? Well, the creator did this, and the writer did this, and all this. Right. And we get really hung up about stuff over here where they don't. No. And so that put me off a lot of the... because the Japanese stuff was so over the top, it threw me off, like the big eyes and some of the jokes and things. But the movies, I think, is really where most of my attention gets to, because, like I said, my favorite has always been Ghost in the Shell, because the entire aesthetic.
You can't go wrong with Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah, it was serious from start to finish. It had that cyberpunk thing going for it. It was just a great story. The end, just left you kind of like, because it's resolved, but it's almost not. Like, you don't know where it's going to go from there. And then they had the show, and the show, I guess, was okay. If you watch
it, Standalone Complex is really good. I used to stay up when Toonami would air it at they had that on at 1 or 2 in the morning. And that theme music was live. The show was really good. Not a lot of people got into it, and some people don't like it. but I enjoyed it. But I like the movie. I have the movie on VHS.
Yeah, I have it in my
Boxed
attic.
up.
Same
Yeah.
thing. Like it was so good, and I really enjoyed it. And but then I was also into some of the Ralph Bakshi stuff at the time. I was into Fire and Ice, and the Lord
yeah.
of the Rings and things like that that he did.
I know exactly
and,
what you're talking about.
And so I liked things that were more serious in that way, that weren't meant to be it didn't give you a bunch of fan service. It didn't give you a bunch of like drawing you in with a little bit of, oh, here's a moment of just crazy silliness for no particular reason, just to break up the story. I liked the consistency, and I think that's where mostly my disconnect is. I'm sure that there's a lot of really great shows out there, and you could list shows for the next 4 hours that you think I should watch, and I probably won't be able to get into them just because I'm so particular about how I watch it. But I'm starting to appreciate it more for what it is compared to when it first showed up here, because like you said, when it first showed up here, it was some of the earlier Naruto stuff, it was Pokemon, it was like it was what's it called, like Sailor Moon and some of the other things, and but now I'm at a point where there's so much of it, and I've heard more about it. I can appreciate it more.
You just can't sit and watch it. I get that.
Like I don't think I
get
could
that.
sit
Like
and
I
watch
said,
Naruto. Really, I could try.
I could. No, you can't, because you had to watch Naruto when it was popular. Because like the thing about anime is you need somebody else to talk to it about, especially the fights. Like me and Wekos, we would have 4 or 5 hour conversations based on the fights, because the fights were legit. Like I'd be like, yo, you see that? You see the fight? You see Kenpachi fight Ichigo, which is one of the hardest fights on Bleach. Like this dude, you have Kenpachi who just loves to fight. He doesn't care if he dies. He does not care if he dies. He just fights. And the eye patch and everything, and like the bells and all that he has on his head, he does that so people can hear him coming, and it traps his spirit energy. So he's not even his full potential. He doesn't fight at his full potential. And to me, that was just so dope. A man who's so powerful. He can murk anybody. He's the most powerful captain probably in Soul Society. And that was always dope to me, just because it was like, here's somebody that doesn't have to fight at their full power, still fights for what he believes in, doesn't care. And I just thought that was really cool. And that's, having those conversations. But Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, it'd be really hard to get into it if you weren't there during the time. If you weren't there when it was really like at its peak, it's hard to jump into because of what it is. But like I would say, Gungrave. Like if you jumped into Gungrave is legit. Gungrave is probably one of my all-time favorites, right behind Outlaw Star. Outlaw Star is another. It's a timeless show. You could pop Outlaw Star in and watch every episode except for like episode 23. It's the only episode, I think it's 23, that they didn't air on Adult Swim because there was nudity. Like the character Gene Starwin and his crew go to this island of the I forget their names, but they're these like tiger girls, right? They're all topless. The whole episode is them going around exploring this pleasure planet with all these topless, women walking around. And that was just funny to me because the rest of the show is dead serious. It's dead serious. But this one episode, this crazy nudity, and they never aired it. I didn't know that existed until I got the DVD set. Because you used to be able to get DVD anime sets bootlegged from Korea for like $20. And I got a plethora of those. I've got that. I've got Big O, Outlaw Star, Cowboy Bebop, Trinity Blood, which is a pretty slick vampire anime. So, but I get it. Like, if you haven't been watching it, it'd be hard to jump into. I don't even jump into stuff. I think I've been jumping into little bite-sized animes that Leah's been sending me, like Spy X Family and My Uncle from Another. Or I found My Uncle from Another Dimension, and there was one more, and I forget the name of it. But I have time to watch them, and they're kind of wholesome. Because the problem with a lot of the action animes that we have on nowadays, they're the same. It's the same story. It's the same story, or the story's trash. Like for instance, Baki was dope. The first season of Baki was dope. It was great. Then they botched the second season, so I was like, I'm not going to watch it if they put it out again. Then they put another spin-off of that season about Baki just training, and it was so over the top. Even he fights an invisible praying mantis in his basement. He envisions this praying mantis. The praying mantis comes to life, and he's literally fighting him in this. It's not even a basement. He just dug a hole, put cement in it, concreted it, and then fights this imaginary praying mantis. I was done. One of my homies at the gym, I was like, because we both talk about anime a lot. And I'm like, I just can't. A lot of people, and like a lot of the newer stuff just doesn't pull me in, like it used to. Like because I think we live in an oversaturated anime market. There's so much that it's hard to find good anime. Oh, there is a good one that I found. I don't think Leah's watched it. I don't know if she will or not. But Tomodachi Game was good. Tomodachi Game is fantastic. I don't know when they're going to make a second season, but that's one of the animes that it caught my eye, and it's basically a game show where it's you're all against each other, so you find out who isn't your friend. And it's a lot more intricate than that. Like I'm giving you a bare bones assessment, but it's a good show. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's probably my favorite that was currently released. I'm just waiting for season 2. Yeah, I'd have to say it's my current favorite. So, anyways, that was long-winded, but there you go.
Well, before we wrap up, because we're going to probably be done a little bit here, but before we wrap up, I want to get into one last angle to all of this. And because it's kind of a thing it's an American thing, I think. It's a United States thing. Because of how we view our summer blockbusters and all this other kind of stuff. We always want to make our cartoons into live action. And there's been a bunch of animes that have been turned into live action. And most of them, I agree with your reaction there, because everybody else, like the ratings usually, most of the time, these live action adaptations have been absolutely terrible. Like there was the Speed Racer one that was mostly looks. There was the Dragon Ball Z one that anybody barely remembers. There was an Avatar one. There's a few more. I probably don't even need to ask, but how do you feel about that? Do you think any of them have been done justice at all, or is there any chance that they will be in the future? Like, do you think somebody will eventually get it right?
This is a tough one because I don't want to ever rule out that they could make a good live action anime. Like I don't want to rule that out. I would say 90% of them are trash. The one, and it was just because it was hilarious, was Cromartie High School. They made a movie. It was over the top, ridiculously stupid, but the show was over the top, ridiculously stupid. It didn't take itself serious. So you didn't have to be like, I got to deal with these actors' emotions. Because the one thing I hate is, and this is the reason I don't watch a lot of movies, is I don't like horrible actors. For instance, I saw Megan recently about the little android doll and all that. The actors were awful. They were awful. And that, a lot of the time, is why live-action anime sucks. Or live-action movies are trash. Because of that, because the actors are terrible. That's the beautiful thing about voice actors. This is why voice actors are 9 times out of 10 better than actual actors. Because they can portray the character, right? But the thing is, and what annoys me, especially with something like the Death Note live action, I absolutely thought Death Note was amazing. You know, it was a good mystery anime. But the live action was so bad. It's like making me, like bile is coming up because it's making me that disgusted. But I don't know what it would take. I couldn't tell you. I don't think these big giant, unless you had a big giant blockbuster Hollywood backing, which I kind of don't really want Hollywood in anime in the first place because they would botch it. They would find some way to put something stupid in it, and then I wouldn't want to watch it. But I think if you have, you have to have the right independent company. Take something like, I think Uzumaki, Junji Ito's masterpiece, could be a good live action. Just because, if you had somebody that did like a kind of, like Guillermo del Toro did Pan's Labyrinth, I think you might have something there. Death Note, a great example of an anime that had a huge manga volume set to live up to, and it did. Like the manga and the anime were both fantastic. I read that one, and I watched the whole series. But you need an independent studio really to kind of bring that to life. But I think something like Junji Ito, Uzumaki, I feel like I know Monster would be a fantastic live action because the manga was really good, and so was the anime. You know, and that's on Netflix for anyone who wants to watch it. It's a good mystery anime. I feel like I've been kind of partial to mystery animes as of late because mystery there seems to be a better fit for mystery more than action because everybody's doing action nowadays. But I think like that mystery genre is really the best spot for anime. I think that could be a good anything that doesn't have to be over the top. Now, if you go on YouTube, there's like a Naruto mock-up. It is amazing. Like, if that would be a movie, I would go see it. I would go see it that day because the way they did, there's a part where they show Itachi and the whole Sasuke part of Naruto. There's a lot of fanboys that love Sasuke and fangirls. Like they like the brooding emo type of villain. I don't like Sasuke. I think he's a goof, to be perfectly honest. I much prefer Itachi and Madara. Madara being like the supreme Itachi of like the whole crew. And I think that it's good because it just does a part where it shows Itachi on top of a telephone pole. Well, if you call it, but it's like a telephone pole, and he's just watching. And the eyes, the Sharingan, the eyes, which I always thought was the coolest part of that series. The way he's just looking out over the carnage he's about to cause is beautiful. It was beautifully done, but I swear it's like when it comes to live action and anime, they don't cast the right people. They have no emotional value at all.
And you know, that's the other thing too. Like, I didn't watch the Ghost in the Shell live action because it's set in Neo Tokyo, right? So you assume the main characters are all going to be, of course, of Asian descent because it's Neo Tokyo. Right. But who's the lead in that movie? You have Scarlett Johansson.
Which is awful. Now, I haven't seen Battle Angel Alita, but
that's
I've
on my
heard
list,
that
actually.
Battle
That's on my list.
Isn't bad. What'd you say?
That's on my list, actually. I would actually like to see that.
Like, that would be something I would like to just sit down and watch because I haven't heard anything bad about it, and it looked pretty cool. I've read the manga. The manga wasn't bad. I have read so much manga in my time. They did one of my favorite racing manga, which was Initial D. Loved Initial D. They did an anime, which wasn't bad. And they did a live action of it, but I never watched it. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but like I said, I think that live actions have been so bad, especially the Dragon Ball ones. Those are awful. Awful.
I've heard. I haven't
can't
subjected myself to them, but I've heard that they're just straight up bad.
Evolution is awful. It's garbage. It's terrible. There's not. That's the thing. Like live action, you're not going to be able to portray everything that needs to be portrayed from anime to live action. There is a sea of disconnect, and I don't want that sea to ever be bridged. I want that to stay disconnected. I don't want a good live action anime unless it was like I said. You pull that Naruto one, I might check that out. But other than that, I don't really want a good live action. I like to keep those separate because anime can tell you a story that a live action or a Hollywood blockbuster can't. You get lost in the mess of Hollywood movies that don't really do a very good job of telling a story because they're not really original. There's very few movies that are original. Everything's always taken from something else, or it's a remaster or a remake or whatever you want to call it, right? That's why I'm not big into Hollywood movies. Because it's like, oh, here's another movie that was just the same as your 15 other movies. But with anime, you get these really, really good stories, and they're acted out really well. Like I said, I saw Megan, and it was just... The doll was cool.
I remember you were hyped for it.
Was legit. But gosh, the acting was terrible. Hurt my soul, not even gonna lie, hurt my soul. And yes, I think My Uncle would be a great live action too, if they could pull that off. So My Uncle from Another Dimension is about this kid's uncle, right? And I'm the one who hit Leah to this because I was like, you should watch it. It's good. It's good. And it was like a 6-7 episode thing on Netflix. You should watch this too. It's pretty good. But it's about this uncle and he ends up in another dimension, right? Not to give too much away, but he ends up coming back, and like one of the first things he asks, and this is what made me laugh, is he asks, "Is Sega still in business? Is the Genesis, the Sega Genesis, still around?" And it basically revolves around, or the Saturn, yeah, it's a Saturn, but it revolves around him getting this Sega Saturn, and then all he does is just talk about Saturn games, like most of the time that he's there, staying with his nephew. It's great. And the fact is, like, Saturn is such an obscure console here in the States because the architecture, the system architecture was darn near impossible to develop for here in the States. That's why PS1 system architecture was beautiful. Anybody and everybody could develop for that system. That's why the PS1 was the best out of the three between the PS1, the 64, and the Sega Saturn. The Sega Saturn was super powerful, but nobody could develop for it because the architecture itself was a nightmare. It was a common nightmare to develop for. And the 64 was a cartridge based.
Yep. Now
cartridge based are a little bit different. You don't have the space on a cartridge that you do on a CD. You have a CD, you have more space. So, not to get too much off point, he constantly brings up Sega Saturn and Sega Saturn games, and it's just that whole, like, it kind of took me back a little bit, and that's why I like it. It gave me that nostalgia, and that's what I think is missing from a lot of anime. There's no nostalgia behind it. There's nothing to really pull you in because we're in a market that's oversaturated with anime. Assassination Classroom, Jujutsu Kaisen. I tried to watch what was it, Hunter x Hunter. I got about 2 or 3 seasons in, and I don't know, man. Like I don't know if part of me has sort of lost that anime luster that I once had, like that really just, man, I got to watch every show. Because there was a time, and I was watching everything I could get my hands on. I was watching Bleach, Naruto, Galaxy Railways, Kodocha, which is a very sweet. You should show your daughter Kodocha. It's a very sweet, like, heartwarming anime about this little girl, and she goes through all this crazy stuff, and it's hilarious. It's just a really wholesome and funny anime. Probably, like, if I had to rate good wholesome comedies, that's probably one of my favorites. I remember watching that on one of the satellite channels we got. But like that, and there was just like a time, like Gungrave and Cromartie and all these great animes came out. And I think a large part of it too, and I think it's just because everybody started watching it, to be honest. Like, it just started to be everywhere. We were going and seeing all this stuff, and there wasn't that sort of veil to it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you don't know what this is? Well, let me hip you to it. Now everybody and their brother's like, did you watch the new Hunter x Hunter or this, that, and the third? I'm like, no, not really. If it wasn't for Leah, I probably wouldn't have watched Spy X. I wouldn't have watched, there's another one that was pretty good. But, like, people give me recommendations and I check them out. So, I don't know. Like I said, man, I love anime. I love watching it. But it has to pull me in. You have to pull me in from the first episode. If you don't pull me in the first episode, I'm going to look at it as a time waste if I have to continue watching it. So that's really it.
All right. Well, there you go. We've had a really great talk. I actually learned a bit more than what I knew before, and I'm pleased for that because that's what the whole point of this is. It's for me to kind of learn a little bit from the guests here. Even though we've had most of these conversations before, there's always something I can pick up from our talks that I didn't have before. And that's helpful. That's helpful for me. I hope the people in the audience learned a lot, and maybe they'll decide to jump into some of those titles that you mentioned. I want to thank Leah for being in the chat room tonight, for chatting it up with us.
Thank you, Leah.
Giving us some good comments. Before we go, is there anything that you want to tell the audience? Anything you want to say? Anything you want to bring up?
Go check me out. You can find me at www.twitch.tv/Uncanny Alchemist.
Yes.
You can find us this Friday. We'll be talking about the antediluvian period, the pre-flood. I am so antediluvian. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about some other stuff. I got topics for 2 weeks. This one antediluvian. Gotta quit doing that. Antediluvian, and next week will be spells. We'll be talking about some different invocations and things like that, and we'll be going down some cool little rabbit holes. Also, come check me out in Pennsylvania, May 13th. That's a Saturday. Come through, swing through. Come watch your boy present. I got a really good idea that I'm like putting together for that. So come check that out. Also, you can check us out, me and my co-host, but now host of
Yes.
Let's Talk About This, but my co-host over at www.youtube.com/thatbadboy at This Uncanny Earth. We got our own handle. I just cleaned it up last night. So
it looks beautiful too.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, this does look like a jumbled up mess. So I cleaned that up. We got more stuff coming down the pipelines. If you guys didn't tune in today, my son, Mr. Bubby Jubs, was live on the stream today.
Ooh.
We were playing Streets of Rage 4. It was a fantastic time. I really enjoyed streaming with him. So that'll probably be something that comes out here every so often. What else? That's about it. I want to thank my good friend here, Spider. I can always tolerate you, even when you make not so tasteful jokes
That's
in
right.
the group.
Big mistake. Huge mistakes. Got to own up to those.
It happens, man. Things like that happen, and you just laugh and keep it pressing. So I want to thank you for having me on. And you know, I hope you pick up at least one show at one point and watch it, and we can have a conversation about it. Because I think there's shows that you would really get into that I think you would personally like. So I don't know, just some food for thought from you, boy.
There we go. I'm going to chew on it a bit.
Chew on it.
Also, don't forget, tomorrow night, going to be on my Twitch channel, which is Twitch TV DMGRGN. And I'm going to be doing my Twitch Tuesday, where I play a game that I have never played before. And I went through to Game Pass, and I downloaded a whole bunch of just random stuff. And I'm even going to hype this one up for you guys. I'm going to be playing Cooking Simulator. That's going to be hilarious. Nice. So, looking forward to that. New episode of the Uncanny Spirits Club on Thursday, and the Antediluvian period on Friday at This Uncanny
The Antediluvian period.
I don't like those Diluvians. I'm going to raise a sign about it.
I'm going to flood something. I don't like those Diluvians. So, yeah. It's a dope show.
Yep.
Appreciate being a guest. We got to do this again. We got to do this about video games next.
Oh yeah, definitely, because it's going to be on the list. 100%. Like, I got all kinds of topics, and we got all kinds of time to talk about them. So
grilling, you know, we're going to have to talk
that's
about
right.
Grilling at some
Grilling,
point.
yeah.
Can't. Yeah.
It's every show is a one-word descriptor. It's like grilling, unicorns, anime, etc. So sequels, prequels. I got to get into prequels too. Oh boy. Well, that's all we got.
Hashtag crimes.
That's all we got. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will see you next time.